In recent weeks, System of a Down frontman Serj Tankian has been highly critical of Imagine Dragons singer Dan Reynolds and his group's decision to perform in Azerbaijan. This is something that obviously Serj feels very strongly about. And now in a brand new interview with Rolling Stone, Reynolds has responded to that criticism from Serj, and Serj has now just responded to what he said. So they're kind of in a back and forth about this. Let's look at all sides and hear what Reynolds had to say in response to Serj Tankian. In recent weeks, System of a Down frontman Serj Tankian has been calling out Imagine Dragons vocalist Dan Reynolds and his group's decision to perform in Azerbaijan. Last year, he released an open letter imploring them to withdraw from the show. He wrote at the time, "Now it has to be said, a few months ago, it came to my attention that Imagine Dragons had planned a show on September 2nd in Azerbaijan. I was sure that they were unaware that Azerbaijan's petro-oligarchic dictatorial regime was starving 120,000 people, which is now being called a genocide by the former prosecutor of the International Criminal Court, Luis Moreno Ocampo. So, through representatives, I sent them a kind letter urging them to reconsider playing their show in Azerbaijan, as it would help whitewash the dictatorial regime's image there. I included various articles, including one by Amnesty International, who I was told they've worked with in the past. There was no response, no answer, no response. As the humanitarian crisis worsens, with starvation already being recorded, I'm forced to publicize this letter in their disregard for this humanitarian catastrophe. Maybe they felt they had a legal liability to play the show. Maybe they just don't care. My whole life I've been an advocate for genocide recognition and have always said there's a price to pay for genocidal regimes or deniers. Another genocide is looming by Azerbaijan, and while this happens, they get to enjoy an American band from LV. Fuck that. That's not right. And to give you an idea of how strongly the members of System of a Down feel about this situation, this is what led the band to reunite in 2020 to release 2 brand new songs to raise awareness about this conflict and to raise money for the cause. Ultimately, Imagine Dragons chose to ignore the open letter from Serj Tankian and played the gig anyway. And in a recent interview with Metal Hammer, Serj was asked about Imagine Dragons, and he slammed them, saying they're not good human beings. He said, "I don't know these guys, but who are these people? I don't understand that type of thinking." Very close thereafter, Azerbaijan attacked the people, and 120,000 people left their historical homes. Look, I'm not a judge for people to tell bands where to play or where not to play. You have other artists playing in very questionable kingdoms run by one person where people don't have a lot of human rights. And I get that they're doing it for money, that they're artists, that they're entertaining, all of that. But when there's a government that's about to commit ethnic cleansing, when Azerbaijan was starving the 120,000 Armenians and not allowing any food or medicine in, you know, as an artist, if I found that out, there's no way I could have gone and played that show. But some artists do. And I don't know what to say about those artists. I don't respect them as human beings. Fuck their art. They're not good human beings as far as I'm concerned. He added, "If you were that blind to justice that you will go and play a show in a country that's starving another country illegally, according to the International Court of Justice, according to what Amnesty International is saying, what Human Rights Watch is saying, if you still go and play that country, I don't know what else to say about you as a human being. I don't even care about your music. If you're a bad human being, I don't give a fuck." So that's where I'm at with that. I have zero respect for those guys. And so naturally, when you have a legendary frontman like Serj Tankian calling you out in that way, you're going to be asked about it. And that's what happened in a recent interview with Dan Reynolds from Imagine Dragons with Rolling Stone. And this is what he had to say about that criticism from Serj. For the first time, Imagine Dragons' Dan Reynolds addressed the situation publicly. He was asked about it by Rolling Stone. He rejected Serj's assertion that it was wrong for him to play in the country, referring to it as a slippery slope. He said, "I think the second you start to do that, there's corrupt leaders and warmongers all over the world. And where do you draw the line?" Now, in response to that statement there from Dan Reynolds, Serj came back with a very strongly worded response with Reynolds saying, "Where do you draw the line?" And Serj basically asking him, "Would you play in Nazi Germany?" And so he's really calling him out about this situation. This is what he had to say in response. Serj shared a picture of Dan Reynolds' response on his Instagram with a statement replying to what Reynolds said in the interview. He wrote, "Dan Reynolds stated, I don't believe in depriving our fans who want to see us play because of the acts of their leaders and their governments. I think that's a really slippery slope. I think the second you start to do that, There's corrupt leaders and warmongers all over the world, and where do you draw the line? Serj said, respectfully, I draw the line at ethnic cleansing and genocide. Azerbaijan's dictatorship, with popular support, was already into a 9-month starvation blockade, qualified as genocide by a former International Criminal Court's prosecutor when they decided to play Baku. Would they play in Nazi Germany? Why don't they want to play in Russia? Because it's not popular? They support Ukraine, but not Armenians? The only slippery slope is the farce moral equivalency at the heart of this hypocritical attitude. I have nothing against this guy nor his band. I just hate artists being taken advantage of to whitewash genocidal dictatorships. And so Serj makes a very interesting point there. He says that Imagine Dragons likely isn't going to play in Russia because it's popular for people to say they're not going to go there, but they'll play at this show even though he called this out and raised some very genuine concerns about that situation. So, you know, as he said, I don't think Serj has a personal issue with him, but this is something that is very strong to him and his other bandmates in System of a Down. And so, you know, he's not going to hold back on this subject. It's a very sad situation. Obviously, there is so much conflict happening around the world right now. It's very sad. That is your latest update here from Rockfeed. Be sure to subscribe with notifications on for the latest news and updates about your favorite bands.